During the mock battle, the Americans were planning behind the Filipinos. These kinds of problems are still seen in the present when GMA was giving a lot of money to Pampanga. Her true intentions was revealed in the previous election when she ran for mayor in Pampanga. GMA indirectly funded herself in the near future.
When the war between America and Spain started, America decided to attack Spain's colonies, which means the Philippines was a target. When America attacked Manila Bay, the battle started. After some time, the Americans headed towards Hong Kong to pick up Aguinaldo from exile. Dewey greeted Aguinaldo with open arms as they spoke to each other. Dewey promised Aguinaldo that the Americans had no intentions of occupying the Philippines. Aguinaldo believed this and had the mistake of not documenting it. He trusted his words because he knew that they had a common enemy, the Spanish, and he also trusted him because of his actions of war towards them. He declared independence when they allied with each other, saying that the Americans had no intention of occupying the Philippines. Dewey denied what Aguinaldo said, and
during the time of the Aguinaldo and the Dewey conversation, the problem here is that it can also be seen today during presidential elections. Like, they make promises and not fulfill them. It's every day in the life that you can see. And during that promise, they say Dewey said to Aguinaldo that he won't go he won't even conquer the Philippines. Look what happened. Just like in, let's say, presidential elections, they make promises and afterwards they don't do it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's the problem here. And that's the connection to that.
Hi, my name is Luis Murk, and today we will be talking about Spanish colonization. So, when we were colonized by the Spanish, we were always abused and everything. That's why the Filipinos wanted to start a revolt. Here are the pictures of the revolt. Andres Bonifacio was inspired by Jose Rizal because he revolted against the Spanish through his writings. But Bonifacio revolted against the Spanish through fighting. That's why he formed the KKK. The secret agreement between Spain and America. Spain made an agreement with America without the Filipinos knowing. Then they made a mock battle against Spain and America. Spain did not want the Philippines to join because they did not want to lose their pride to the Filipinos.
Emilio Aguinaldo, born on March 22, 1869 in Cavite, Cavite, the seventh of 8 children, he made the Biak na Beto Republic and the Malolos Constitution. He is also the first Philippine president. Cavite, Cavite, formerly called Cavite El Viejo. Cavite is the birthplace of Emilio Aguinaldo, the first president of the Republic of the Philippines. It is also the location of his home, the Aguinaldo Shrine, where independence from Spain was declared on June 12, 1898. On June 12, 1898, they raised the Philippine flag and sang the national anthem for the very first time. Marcela Marino de Agoncillo was a Filipina remembered in Philippine history as principal seamstress of the first unofficial Philippine flag, gaining her the title Mother of the Philippine Flag. The Lupang Inirang was made by Julian Felipe in lyrics, adapted from his poem Filipinas. And Jose Palma created the march.
Was the Philippine independence declared at the right time?
In my opinion, the Declaration of Independence was declared in the right time, because if we didn't declare, we still might be colonized by the Americans until this day. By the time that we revolt, the Americans could have already improved their guns and got more reinforcements. Besides, our country got to start to make its own government during the American colonization.
What are the pros and cons of declaring independence at that time?
There were many pros and cons that came from declaring independence at that time. One good thing of declaring independence on that time was if we didn't declare our independence, the Filipinos would think that their revolts were all useless. one bad thing of declaring independence during that time is Filipinos were not ready for for independence because they just came from war and the leaders are not ready to start its own government and make its laws. And we were colonized from the we were colonized by the Spaniards for 332 years. And in those 332 years, we were treated as slaves. So we didn't actually know what we need to do. This event is similar when the Filipinos voted for Noynoy Aquino to be the president of the Philippines because they thought he would be as great as his parents, Ninoy Aquino and Cory Aquino. Ninoy Aquino was the person who sacrificed his life for the good of the Filipinos, and Cory Aquino was the first female president and who just recently died. Noynoy Aquino was still emotional because of his mother's death. Like the Filipinos before, right after they declared independence, they were still emotional due to the fact that they just came from war.
Philam War, one of the wars that the Philippines had to endure, which brought great change to its country. There were three major events in the war: the declaration of it, which was at 1899, a year right after the colonization of Spain, where two Filipino soldiers were shot by the Americans because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that triggered a war that would last 3 years. The second event was when Aguinaldo escaped the grasp of the Americans to give hope for the Filipinos to keep fighting, but he was still eventually captured at Palaan, Isabela, fighting to the bitter end in 1901 to the spring of 1902. And the last event is the declaration of our independence in 1946, declared by President Reagan. Today, we still suffer under constant violence and not such as holdups. People today haven't changed as much as we did back then. The war against the Filipinos could have easily been prevented if Dewey had pushed through his promise, or if the misunderstanding could have been solved by discussions instead of bloodshed or gunfire. Just like war, today people still make holdups for the most unreasonable reasons, such as their desperate need for money drives them to the point where even innocent lives are wasted.
Did the Filipinos make a right choice in entering a war with the Americans?
I think they made the right choice in entering the war. They should have fought the Americans, maybe not head on, but they should have fought, putting up a fight, defending their country from the foreign invaders. The Filipinos have suffered long enough in the colonization of Spain to be conquered right after they were liberated.
Did Aguinaldo make the right choice of escaping the Americans? Or was it better if he faced the Americans immediately after the declaration of war?
I personally think that Aguinaldo should have ran, keeping the hope of the Filipinos burning, to keep the war going on, and to keep the pride of the Filipinos intact. Personally, if I was in Aguinaldo's position, I would have done the same thing. True, it was not the most glorious path to take, but he had to do it to keep the war going on. He ran not because he was a coward, but because it was the only course of action left.
The Malolos Constitution was inspired by the countries namely Mexico, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Belgium, and France. There were some revisions made because of the objections of Apolinar Mabini and was later presented to Emilio Aguinaldo. The aim of the Malolos Constitution was for the Philippines to become a separate government from the Americans, their colonizers. This was the birth of the Philippine Republic. The Republic separated the church from the state and has three different branches, namely the executive, which was led by the president and its cabinets, while the judicial power was given to the Supreme Court, and lastly, the legislative was the one whom elects the Chief Justice governing the judicial power.
The establishment of a revolutionary government and constitution done at the right time.
In my opinion, the establishment of a revolutionary government and constitution were done at the wrong time. Before the establishment of a revolutionary government and constitution was the Philippine independence. And during this time, a lot of Filipinos were very patriotic and were in a state of stress. By adding the revolutionary government, we are adding stress towards the Filipinos. Another reason is that we are in a state of war against the Spaniards, and that if we are to make a law during a war, not all Filipinos will be well informed. If we are to make a revolutionary government, this will not be known to the Filipinos.
Should they have waited for peace and stability before establishing a revolutionary government?
If I were in their shoes, I would have waited for peace and stability. An example would be if I were to make a law is that all Spanish prisoners should be exiled to Visayas. But then after the war, laws like this one will not be applicable. And so will other laws similar to this. Another reason is that if we are to make a law during a war is that these laws will probably benefit the war and not the people. But then after the war, the government will have to revise everything to make it benefit the people. During the Malolos Congress, the laws were not applicable to benefit the people, but instead to benefit the war. We can see this in the present when Tito Soto suggested the cybercrime law. The cybercrime law is not applicable to all citizens, but only to netizens. Netizens are citizens in the internet. But the Philippines, as we know now, is a third world country, and we cannot clearly say that we have a lot of netizens.